I just couldn't put this one down. I just wanted to know what was going to happen. I was on the edge of my seat, but at the same time, the script also raises some really complicated questions about the nature of drone warfare, the way we fight now. And there was so much in the script that I just didn't know enough about. And so you could legitimately ask, well, why would you want to direct it? But what it did is it forced me into sort of this deep dive research. Before I ever called them back, I had to know whether what was being discussed in the film was real, whether these drones were real. I knew somewhat about drones, but I just didn't have any idea of the complexity of drone warfare and the difficult moral and ethical questions that it raises. Eye in the Sky essentially tells the story of a military intelligence officer played by Helen Mirren, who's running a drone surveillance operation out of the UK, and she's watching a terrorist cell in Nairobi, Kenya. And she's been tracking this group for a long time, and she essentially wants to take them out with a Hellfire missile when she finds that they're planning a suicide operation. But that is not such a simple decision, because in order to launch this missile, she has to refer to politicians, military commanders, and people in what are called the kill chain. So the film involves multiple decision makers in different parts of the world. There are politicians in London. The drone pilot is flying the plane that's observing this operation out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And of course, there's the people on the ground in the vicinity of this, where these terrorists are, who may be badly injured if they use a Hellfire. And so the film is essentially a modern war thriller. At a certain point in the operation, just when Colonel Powell has got permission to actually launch her Hellfire missile on these suicide bombers and take out the target that she's been tracking for 6 years, a young girl walks into what we call the kill zone, the zone around the house that's going to be targeted, where collateral damage is likely. So if you imagine planting a Hellfire missile through the roof of a house, it's not a sniper's bullet. It's still a bomb, in a colloquial sense, that is going to cause massive amounts of debris to fly around. And so there are estimates done that estimate the extent to which damage or loss of life is likely as, if you like, rings spread out further and further from where the target is. And as it happens, this young girl is on the periphery of damage, but to what extent is she likely to be injured or not injured? And is her life something that can be sacrificed as an innocent person in order to eliminate the suicide bomb threat? I spoke to military intelligence officers as part of our research, and one of them said to me, the problem is you can get absolutely obsessed with wanting to eliminate that particular person. And that is why we need the military lawyers to tell us whether we might be going a bit off track here and remind us of what the consequences might be if we're overly zealous. We could be charged with a war crime. When is the right moment to strike? Is that strike legal? What kind of collateral damage will that strike cause? How many other people might be injured while you get rid of your particular target? And is it worth it? And if you've been tracking that person for 6 years, you might feel strongly that it's worth it. But if you're the pilot who doesn't know anything of the history of this suspect, the pilot played by Aaron Paul, for example, is seeing this suspect and seeing the collateral damage in the form of a young girl and other people at a market who may be injured in taking out this target. And he feels very uncomfortable about pulling that trigger. From where he's sitting, he's the person who actually pulls the trigger and is going to have to go home and live with the fact that he not only took out a target that his military commanders wanted eliminated, but may also take out innocent lives. The character of Colonel Powell was originally written for a man. And when I was reading it, I just kept thinking of Helen Mirren, and I'm not sure why. I suppose I can rationalize it after the fact, but in that Helen is this incredibly steely person. She's a force of nature. She has a presence. She's highly intelligent. But I also felt that I didn't want the film to seem like a guy's movie only. I feel that the questions that the film raises about drone warfare and the nature of drone warfare are something that we as a society in general need to discuss. And I thought that there are women more and more in the military, in these kind of roles, the role that Helen plays. And I felt that we should have a diverse cast in order to encourage as many people, men, women, to engage in the conversation that the film generates. Aaron Paul plays a character called Steve Watts, who's a pilot. He flies drones out of the Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, near Las Vegas. And his job at the beginning of the film is simply to pilot this remote aircraft that's thousands of miles away flying over Africa and be the eye in the sky. The eye that, using video surveillance technology, is watching what's happening on the ground. And of course, when the operation escalates from a capture to a kill, he's the person who is going to have to pull the trigger and fire a Hellfire missile on the suspects, on the target down on the ground. And he is the person who will be responsible for the possible death of innocent civilians around that target. So in looking for an actor to play the character of Steve Watts, I really wanted to find an actor who could be both determined and strong, but also extremely vulnerable. He's an agent, a special agent on the ground in Kenya, who is sent in to be very close to the safe house where the terrorists are hiding and operate a very small drone. And so his life is very much at risk. And what I found when I was working with Barkhad that I was so pleased about is that Barkhad knows how to play this balance between, which I was very keen to find in the movie, this balance between the tragedy of what's happening and the almost absurdity of what's happening. There's a warmth and a humor to Barkhad that wasn't used as much in Captain Phillips. He gets a chance in this film to show another side of himself, which is a really kind, warm, humane human being, while at the same time still being a tough guy. When you're making a film that is something that people are going to ask very specific questions about, is this technology real? Is this how the kill chain works? Is this actually how a Hellfire is fired? You want to make sure that you've done your research really well. And so we hired military advisors to be on set with the actors. We had a British military advisor who worked with Helen Mirren, who was from the world of military intelligence and had been into the bunker that she works out of and understood the world that she inhabited. And we had a drone pilot who's now in the reserves but still flying, who came out and worked with Aaron Paul and Phoebe Fox, and made sure that every button they touch, the way they control the plane is accurate, and gave them a lot of comfort, I think, because what you want as an actor is you want to get the technical stuff out of the way. You want to know that if I push the lever like this, it's correct. If I touch that autopilot button, it's correct. If I read this set of information about when to launch, it's correct. All right, let me get all that technical stuff down so that I can get back to the job that an actor's really supposed to do, which is to deliver emotional truth. One of the things that was most interesting to me in the script was the way I empathized with every single character in the film, every single person in the film, regardless of where they were. And I wanted very much to make sure we conveyed that. And so talking to the actors, it was very important that you don't in any way stereotype your character. Even though the characters disagree, we, the audience, if we have any empathy at all, can imagine ourselves in the shoes of each particular character, and I wanted to feel that each character had a point, but only from the position in which they sit. The challenge we had on the film was that the film is set in multiple countries. Helen Mirren's character is in London, someone else is in Hawaii, Aaron Paul is in Nevada, the people on the ground are in Kenya, Nairobi. Anyway, we went back to my home country, South Africa. We went to Cape Town, and we have fantastic crews in South Africa, many of whom I've worked with before. And we were able to create London, Hawaii, Kenya, Creature Air Force Base in Nevada, all in and around Cape Town. And I'm really, really proud of the work that Johnny Brett, my production designer, and his team did to pull that off, because it meant we were able to make the film without funds that we would have needed to travel all over the world. I hope that an audience will get two things out of this film. One, I hope they'll have a great thrill ride while watching it. They'll be on the edge of their seats. They'll be entertained, for want of a better word. But I also hope that, having seen the film, they will be left with a great deal to talk about. The film raises some interesting questions. I'd like to think we've made a film that is both entertaining and provocative and challenging and something to talk about.